Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Weber, and today we are going to talk about standards and student learning outcomes, which can be also called objectives. So, those are interchangeable. I'm Dr. Weber, and we'll specifically be talking about the standards and objectives in adapted physical education and physical education. Our table of contents, we are now at the number 4, part 4. How, what are we actually planning? How are we doing this? How are we teaching adaptive physical activity? What are our guiding foundations as it comes to standards? In our next lecture, we'll get into individualized education planning, and we'll talk about specific cases and go over individual needs for specific disabilities and goals and objectives for those individuals. But today we're going to talk about standards and learning outcomes. I did add in some words into this table of contents. I added in curriculum development because we'll be getting into that in 7, 8, and 9, as well as lesson planning. And let's get started. So the learning objectives for today, hopefully after the end of this lecture, you'll be able to discuss how national and state standards help guide teachers when planning in physical and adaptive physical education. You'll be able to discuss the websites associated with standards and objective selections. You'll be able to discuss the level of standards, and you'll be able to write objectives and goals based on national and state standards. You should be able to identify the parts associated with creating a student learning outcome, and you should be able to discuss and identify the 3 learning domains and give examples of each one. So recapping, what is adapted physical education? It is also called specially designed physical education. It is special education. It is not a related service. It's not physical therapy. It's not occupational therapy. It's not speech therapy. So if it's an actual part of the program, it is direct. It's special education service like math, English, science, and social studies. It's required by law for students that demonstrate a need for specially designed instruction. So when it comes to objectives and different levels of planning, first we look at there's a standard level. So when it comes to national standards, um, we have what is called the Society of Healthful Living and Adapt and Physical Educators, which is called SHAPE. So this is our governing body when it comes to physical education in the United States. So SHAPE America has a website, and they have their own national standards. There are also state standards in North Carolina and other states. And then there are also school curriculum level objectives and standards that the school will have or the curriculum in the district will have. And then you'll also have specific goals for the unit in mind. And then you'll have specific skills to be learned in those specific units. So these are all objectives at different levels of planning. And so they're all handed down. Basically, they get decided in national and state, and you'll see that there are physical education national standards and adapted physical education standards, but there's no specific curriculum for adapted PE. Adapted PE utilizes the physical education objectives and learning credentials when it comes to the curriculum. So when it comes to the new national PE standards, here we have on their website, shapeamerica.org. If you go to their PE standards, you'll see that if you scroll down to standard number 1, let's just first go over what they are. So they're grade span learning indicators. They are basically going to show you how we're going to develop the health and physical education of the student. So standard 1 develops a variety of motor skills. What does that mean? Well, if you go to pre-K, it means demonstrates a variety of locomotor skills with the concept of space, effort, relationship, awareness. So let's just go over that first standard. Standard 1, demonstrate a variety of locomotor skills. So what are locomotor skills? That's skipping, hopping, jumping, galloping, running, jumping, that type of thing. And then you have with the concepts of space. So having personal space, understanding that you have to have personal space and understanding there's different levels of effort, so high, medium, and low efforts. So can you do it slow? Can you do it middle effort? Can you do it really high? So can you run really fast? Can you walk really slow? Can you use a lot of effort? And then relationship awareness. So your ability to identify objects and manipulate those objects in your surrounding. So that would be standard one, develops a variety of motor skills. And so if we were to break this down into an objective into our classroom, or let's just say what I actually teach, I might say the students will be able to perform a variety of locomotor skills, including skipping and jumping. And then I might have music on, and I might say, all right, when the music starts, we're going to skip around the gym. I want to make sure that you're going at a safe level of speed, so don't go too fast, don't go too slow, don't run into anybody, and go in a circle around the gym. Okay, so I might have the students skip around in a circle in the gym, and that would demonstrate a variety of locomotor skills with the concept of space, effort, and relationship awareness. So I'd add in things maybe like walking on your tippy toes really slow, or squatting down and jumping down like a frog. So, having fun, especially with animals when it comes to teaching kindergartners. Okay, let's go to the second one. Demonstrates jumping and landing in a non-dynamic environment. So non-dynamic environment means like not an actual competitive environment. So they're actually taking time jumping and landing in their own individual space. So let's just take a hula hoop out, and we'll have the student perform 3 jumps in and out into the hula hoop, and they'll step out of the hula hoop. So the criteria would be to bend at the knees, extend the arms, and horizontally jump forward into the hula hoop and then step out. So this is going to demonstrate jumping and landing in a non-dynamic environment. Demonstrates transferring weight on multiple body parts. So you could have them do some drills where they jump from one leg into another onto another leg using like 2 hula hoops, so having them jump side to side. So when you look at the standards, it doesn't tell you what to teach, but it tells you basically the background of what you should be teaching when it comes to a variety of motor skills. Let's go to grades 3 through 5. So after we've learned some basic locomotor skills, we're probably going to be advanced in grades 3 through 5. So let's see. Demonstrates jumping and landing in a non-dynamic environment. Okay, so that is an important skill to learn, so it is kept in grades 3 through 5. Okay, demonstrates throwing in a variety of practice tasks. Demonstrates catching in a variety of practice tasks. So you might have students get with partners, and they're going to just practice maybe throwing a ball to each other, and then you might have one student tell another student to go, and they might throw it to them while they're running. So simple throwing exercises that you would perform maybe during a football lesson, a softball lesson, that type of thing. Let's go to grades 6 through 8. Demonstrates correct technique in a variety of outdoor activities. Okay, so maybe you have a ropes course outside if you're lucky to have that, or if you have any adventure activities you could do outside that involve, trust and leadership skills. Demonstrate appropriate form in a variety of skill-related fitness activities. So you have to know what skill-related fitness activities are, and then also health-related fitness activities. You need to know what those are. So health-related fitness activities would include muscular endurance, muscular strength, power, strength, flexibility, and BMI. And then skill-related fitness would be things like balance, coordination, speed, I believe, is in there, agility, that type of thing. So here's another one, demonstrating a striking motion with a handled implement. So that is basically any skills in hockey, any skills in like lacrosse would be an example of that. Baseball would even deal with that as well. And so you'll have different standards. So that's standard 1, which is basically your basic psychomotor skills, your object control and locomotor skills. So all those skills that you perform on your feet and all the manipulating activities that you'd perform in sports. So standard 2 is basically applies knowledge related to movement and fitness concepts. So The student used their knowledge of movement concepts, tactics, and strategies across a variety of environments. This knowledge helps the student become more versatile and efficient mover. So this is basically physical literacy. Okay, so they recognize personal space and where to move in general space. So they're understanding spatial movement and fitness concepts. And so if they're able to perform these concepts in the class, they'll be a more efficient uh, physical learner. So things like identifying simple strategies and chasing and fleeing activities. So talking about these things, identifying movement concepts related to locomotor, non-locomotor, and manipulative skills. Understanding that you can skip in a zigzag, you can skip in a circle, you can skip in a diagonal, but they would have to say that. So they would have to verbally be able to say that. So this is a great way to assess our students when it comes to their cognitive domain. So this would deal with the cognitive domain specifically when it comes to the physical education environment. So as they get older, grades 2 through 5, demonstrate knowledge of offensive strategies and small-sided invasion practice tasks. So basically asking them what are the offensive strategies in soccer. um, what are some things that you can do as a team to get a goal. So it might be, spread out when you're passing the ball, make sure that you're running off the ball, or make sure that if the defense pulls up, that's the time to bring your whole offensive back. So just having strategies for invasion practices when it comes to offense, because and then you might have defensive strategies. So how to pull up if you are trying to get the other team offside, or how to clear the ball. So defensive strategies and small-sided invasion practices, all these things, we want them to be able to illustrate, list, or demonstrate knowledge of these um, activities performed in sports so that they gain a broader understanding of how to play the sport, so that they in turn become a better player of the sport. Okay. Define and explain how to implement the FIT principle: frequency, intensity, time, and type, principle of fitness of development. So having them create, maybe define or explain what the FIT principle means. So you don't have to have them create anything yet because they're in grades 3 through 5, but maybe when they're in seventh and eighth or ninth or 12th grade, they'll start creating their own FIT program. And so these are lifelong activities that we want them to understand and learn throughout our lifetime. So demonstrate knowledge of tactics and strategies within lifetime sports and activities. Applies knowledge of rest when planning regular physical activity. Um, Identify snacks and food choices that help hinder performance, recovery, and enjoyment during physical activity. So these are all basically standards and objectives and outcomes that we should be trying to attain before they graduate high school. So this National PE Standards Shape America gives us a great underpinning of what to teach and when to teach it. So you might be teaching a seventh grader with an intellectual disability, but you might have to bring it back to 3 through 5 or K through 2. And you might see that the skills interlap, but you might see there's some preceding skills that the individual might need to learn. And so it's good to look at the standards and start with the first standards for any individual that you're just meeting, or try to meet them where they're at in their grade level. Standard 3, develop social skills. So this is going to hit the affective domain of learning. So we talked about the psychomotor, cognitive. Now we're talking about the affective. So this is going to be deal with things like recognizing the feelings of others, demonstrate ability to encourage others, uses communication skills to share space, responds appropriately to directions and feedback, demonstrates respectful behaviors that contribute to positive social interactions and movement, describes why following rules is important for safety and fairness. So these are all questions that they can answer, or ways that we can observe their social behavior. These are the social requirements we would like to have in PE. These are the standards that we'd like to identify. So makes fair choices, discussing problems and solutions with teacher in a physical activity setting, not just bullying people. Make safe choices with physical education equipment, so you're not just throwing equipment around. So these are all the social things in the behavioral outcomes and objectives we want to have for our students in physical education and adaptive physical education. Grades 3 through 5 describe the perspectives of others in a variety of activities, use communication skills to negotiate rules and responsibilities in physical education setting, make choices that are fair according to activity etiquette, so playing by the rules, that type of thing. Grades 6 through 8 solves problems amongst teammates and opponents. So maybe you might stop play and say, "Hey, what would be another strategy if we are playing badminton? If you have players on one side of the court, obviously you'd want to hit the shuttlecock to the other side of the court. You know, talking about what problems. Maybe you see a team bunching up, and that's the problem. So the solution is to get more personal space on the field. Maybe you have someone on the team that's a little bit slower that should be in a position that would strengthen them. Maybe they should play defense so they can sit back and they have a really good foot. They can clear the ball, but maybe they're not as speedy as a forward. So students should be able to recognize this as it relates to sport, and they should also be able to do this when it comes to fitness too. Um, so let's see if we can find anything in fitness. So applies best practices for participating in safely in physical activity. So injury prevention, hydration, use of equipment, implements that and provides feedback to improve performance without prompting from teacher. So doing things without the teacher's, motivation. So this is self-determination, being able to do things independently without having an external force. So this is nerviating kind of your internal motivation, which is what we want to strive for in grades 9 through 12. Because remember, we want to develop from kindergarten through 12th grade. We're not teaching the same things every single year. They definitely progress. And, individual may have a disability in comprehension of a kindergarten or a first grader, but there still might be some things in their appropriate grade level that fit their intellect. Standard four develops personal skills, identifies personal benefits of movement, and chooses to engage in physical activity. So this would be another cognitive domain. Identifies physical activities that can meet the need for self-expression. Identifies physical activities that can meet the need for social interaction. So this is more cognitive slash social emotional. So this is your social emotional learning. You have recognize individual challenges through movement. So maybe it's range of motion. Maybe it's just not being quick enough, but being able to discuss these things. This is grades pre-K, K through 12. Demonstrate techniques like breathing to assist with managing emotions and behaviors in physical activity. So discussing with them why breathing is important. This is going to be standard 3 that hits their social emotional needs. So really connecting intellect with social and emotional. All right. Grades 3 through 5 explain how preferred physical activities meet the need for personal self-expression, set observable long-term goals, and then getting into 6 through 8, examine individual and group challenges through movement, set goals to participate in physical activities based on examining individual ability, and then 9 through 12 sets and develops movement goals related to personal interests. So getting them to develop their own personal interest, own goals through their own personal interest. They like to dance. Maybe their goal is to join a dance team. Okay, and so maybe that's what they're deciding when they're in 9th to 12th grade, that they'd like to join a dance team, or they'd like to join the Special Olympics, or they're a really good tennis player and they want to join the Special Olympics tennis team, or they're a good swimmer and they want to make sure that they set a goal of maybe being able to swim a certain amount of distance in a certain amount of time. So this is the grades that you'd be performing those kind of long-term fitness activities in grades 9 through 12. And so we are treating individuals with disabilities the same as if they didn't have a disability, so, meaning that we're still going to give them the same standards as people without disabilities. Just because they have a disability, we're not going to lower the standards for them. So we still want them to hit the same standards. And it might not be at the exact grade level, but the good thing about these standards is they come in a progression so that you can just go back if you need to. So these are the 4 standards in physical education when it comes to the Shape America goals. Then we have what is called the National Consortium for Physical Education for Individuals with Disabilities. They have their own standards that apply for people with physical for with a sorry with disabilities. So we're going to go ahead and check those out. We can find them here. Here they are. So standard one, when it comes to individuals with disabilities, let's see if we can find it. Here we go. So standard one is human development. The foundation of proposed goals and activities for individuals with disabilities is grounded in a basic understanding of human development and its application to those with various needs. For the adaptive physical education teacher, this implies familiarity with theories and practices related to human development. So you basically have to have a good understanding of how um, the human develops from infantile stage to toddler stage to young child to young teen to teenager to because without this understanding and underpinning of human movement, we won't be able to help people that have limitations in motor skills, and we have to regress our exercise and movements for these individuals. So we have to know the progression and order of how the body or how the human develops over a lifetime. So that's our first standard. And when it comes to adaptive PE, the second one is motor behavior. So teaching individuals with disabilities requires some knowledge of how individuals develop. In the case of adaptive physical educators, it means having knowledge of typical physical and motor developments, as well as understanding the influence of developmental delays on these processes. Because developmental delays have different have an influence on the development of people with disabilities. It also means understanding the principles behind how individuals learn motor skills and applying these principles of motor learning during the planning and teaching of physical education to students with disabilities. So we know they learn different, we know they move different, we know that some will have sensory processing disorder, which may affect their behavior when it comes to stimulation. So how are we going to plan and adapt physical activity for these individuals based on those national PE standards that we just talked about? Okay. Standard three, exercise science. An adaptive physical educator, you must understand that modifications to the scientific principles of exercise and the application of these principles may be needed when teaching individuals with disabilities to ensure that all children with disabilities enjoy similar benefits of exercise. While there is a wealth of information of the foundational sciences, the focus of this standard is on the principles that address the physiological and biomechanical applications encountered when working with diverse populations. So, exercise science, having a great understanding of energy systems, having a good understanding of range of motion, having a great understanding of assessments when it comes to training, when it comes to strength and power and cardiovascular and BMI. This goes further in an exercise science program than it does in a physical education program. So any new knowledge you can get on exercise science would be beneficial if you're an adaptive PE teacher. Another standard is measurement and evaluation. This standard is one of the foundational standards underscoring the background an adaptive physical educator should have in order to comply with the mandate of legislation and meet the needs of students. So, understanding the measurement of motor performance to a large extent is based on a good grasp of motor development and the acquisition of motor skills covered in other standards. So we have to be able to assess these individuals based on their individual needs, and we have to understand a scope or a broad range of assessments that will be used in this evaluation. History and philosophy. So this standard traces facts regarding legal and philosophical factors involved in current day practices in adaptive PE. This information is important to understand the changing contribution that physical educators can make in the lives of students with disabilities. Major components of each law that are related to education and physical activity are emphasized, and a review of history and philosophy related to special and general education is also covered in the standard. So we've already talked about history and laws of individuals with disabilities, and so that's kind of the cornerstone. And then also the philosophy of where it came from and its progression throughout modern day culture, like unified PE. Standard 6, a unique attribute of learners. So this standard refers to informed based on the disability areas identified in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Materials categorically organized in order to present the information in a systematic manner. And this organization is not intended to advocate a categorical approach to teaching children with disabilities. All children should be treated as individuals and assessed to determine what needs they have. So everyone's going to have unique needs, and we have to um, treat these unique needs differently. Curriculum theory and development. As you are planning to teach physical education to students with disabilities, you should recognize that certain curriculum theory and development concepts, such as selecting goals based on relevant and appropriate assessments, must be understood by adaptive physical educators. Curriculum theory and development are more than writing unit and lesson plans. They are critical to the development of a comprehensive and developmentally appropriate program for a student with disability. So curriculum will be going deep into that in a couple lectures. We have another standard solely on assessment, which is the standard address. The process of assessment one is commonly taught part of a basic measurement and evaluation, but assessments go beyond gathering data to include measurements for the purpose of making decisions about special services and program components for individuals with disabilities. So this assessment will demonstrate the need for eligibility. So if you assess an individual with a disability, they pass the assessment, they might not need adaptive physical education. So then their IEE plan would not contain adaptive physical education. It would just have general PE, and there wouldn't be any IEP goals related to that because they wouldn't be eligible. So some people might not be eligible for adaptive PE. Okay, so make sure that you assess them first. If they are eligible, you have to prove this through assessment. This assessment will then determine their present level of performance, and then this present level of performance will give us the criteria we need to develop goals and objectives. Then what we do is we monitor these goals and objectives and progress with the IEP team and the parent and the child, and we monitor this and we modify and include any adaptations as needed, and we kind of outline this plan through an IEP. We'll talk more about that next unit. So instructional design and planning must occur before an adaptive physical educator can provide services to meet legal mandates, educational goals, and most importantly, the unique needs of individuals with disabilities. So many of the principles addressed early in the human development, motor, behavior, exercise science, curriculum theory are applied to this standard in order to successfully design and plan physical education programs. So the instructional design and planning in the IEP process is going to be related to all the exercise science that you are familiar with, human development, curriculum theory, just understanding all of these aspects to create the best plan. Teaching, number 10, a major job responsibility for any adaptive physical educator is teaching. In this standard, many of the principles addressed earlier in standard areas such as human development, motor behavior are applied to this standard just like it was in the last standard. And this is going to give students with disabilities very high quality PE. Consultation and staff development. So this is a cooperative, communicative, collaborative process. As more students with disabilities are included in general PE class, teachers will provide more consultation and staff development activities for colleagues. This requires sensitivity and excellent collaboration and communication skills. You may have to tell people about what adaptive PE is, okay? Or what an IEP is related to physical education. The dynamics of interdisciplinary cooperation in the consultation process requires knowledge of several consolidative models. This standard identifies key competencies that an adaptive physical educator should know related to consultation and staff development. Okay, standard 12 is student and program evaluation. Okay, student evaluation can be either formative or summative, basically showing incremental progress or a summative progress or summative report. They can both be qualitative or quantitative, depending on the individual's needs. So you might have both. I would suspect you would probably write notes for each assessment that you perform, maybe any issues that they were having, or maybe what you could do in the future, some notes what you could do. And the importance of student evaluation for individuals with disabilities is highlighted in IDEA and the IEP process and procedures. Program evaluation is a process of using student physical education performance data to determine and communicate the degree to which the physical education program goals and objectives are being achieved across all students. Adaptive PE educators must play an active role in ensuring that their students with disabilities, whether in GPE or APE, are achieving both their short-term annual IEP goals as well as their long-term PE program goals. Standard 13, continuing education. So there's no stop to what we do as an adapted physical educator. We have to keep learning in our fields. So we join the NC PEID group. We get our CAPE certification. We volunteer for special events for people with disabilities. We take advantage of in-service workshops and external workshops and seminars. We go to presentations. We teach presentations. We go to conferences. We meet new people that are in the field. Ethics, a fundamental premise within the APINs is that those who seek and meet the standards to be certified as an adaptive PE educator will strive at all times to adhere to the highest of ethical standards in providing programs and services for children and youth with disabilities. This standard has been developed to ensure that its members not only understand the importance of sound ethical practices, but also adhere to advance such practices. So the CAPE certification is one of the highest certifications you can get, and that is outlined in APINs. And then standard 15, communication. In the recent years, the role of the professional in adaptive physical education has evolved from being a direct service provider to include communicating with families and other professionals in order to enhance program instruction for individuals with disabilities. This standard includes information regarding the adaptive physical educator, effectively communicating with families and other professionals using a team or approach in order to enhance service delivery to individuals with disabilities. So the communication and the collaboration is key to making this a solid program for an individual with disability. So that is the National Consortium of Physical Education for Individuals with Disabilities, and they're the ones responsible for getting people CAPE certified. If you are not CAPE certified, it doesn't mean you can't teach adapted PE, but you are going to be at a higher level, and you're going to be probably a little bit more prepared than your typical PE teacher to teach it. The public schools in North Carolina, when we look at their essential standards, you'll see that this link will give you a perspective on how they outline their standards. So you have motor skills, movement concepts, health-related fitness, and personal social responsibility. So North Carolina has kind of highlighted what they want their students to learn kindergarten through 12th grade, and in order from motor skills, movement concepts, health-related fitness, to personal social responsibility. So motor skills being psychomotor, movement concepts going to be cognitive, and then you have health-related fitness, which is going to be psychomotor, and then PR, personal social responsibility, that would be your affective domain. So when you're choosing skills, you would go through am I meeting standards in both national and state standards, and you would apply these in your lesson plans so that your lesson plans are tied to standards. So when you're evaluated or being supervised, people can see that you are following the standards that apply in the curriculum for that age, because this will ensure that they are getting age-appropriate activities, and these standards will typically imply that you won't be doing anything out of the realm of PE. So execute recognizable forms of the basic locomotor skills. So they're very heavy on locomotor and object control skills very early. And then as they get older, you'll see things like use movement combinations and rhythmic activities with an emphasis on keeping to the beat of music. So a little bit more advanced. 7th grade, create movement combination, illustrate fundamental motor skills, and complex skills that contribute to movement proficiency in small-sided game situations. So it's pretty broad. So basically getting them in small-sided game situations like an invasion game, like soccer game, basically. So it's pretty broad. And so most of the time when you're planning, you're going to be hitting these standards anyway. But it's a good thing to go look at the standards and just making sure that you're hitting the right ones, going in order, not skipping the order of the standards, and going at the right age appropriateness. So when it comes to the three parts of an instructional objective, we'll talk about what that means next. So basically, when we're looking at how to write a lesson plan, we're not we'll write the standards at the top of our lesson plan. So I'll say what standards were applied in this lesson plan. But when it comes to how we're going to teach an objective, we have to kind of break it down into a student learning outcome or objective. So the student will be able to, there's going to be a behavior, there's going to be a condition, and there's going to be a criteria. So what the behavior is what you expect the student to be able to do as a result of the instruction. It's usually a verb, so like strike, hit, pass, or show support if it's affective, or it's list or discuss, that type of thing. That's the behavior. What are the conditions? So this is the context or situation under which the behavior is to be exhibited. So in a game-like situation, from 10 feet away, that type of thing. Criteria, what is the level of performance expected? So correctly using all cues, or using correct technique. Hips back, shoulders back, whatever the criteria is. Maybe it's 80%, or maybe you're going for a percentage type. So those would be the three parts to an instructional objective when it comes to writing out a skill. Now, when it comes to psychomotor, cognitive, affective, something like psychomotor would be making a basket. You're going to do 20 curl ups. You're going to use man-to-man in defense. So I want you to shadow someone. I want you to kick a ball. I want you to run. These are all psychomotor tasks. Then cognitive would be, I want you to identify 3 rules in badminton, or I want you to identify 3 skills in basketball. Okay, cognitive would be create your own rhythmic activity to this song. Describe the rules in baseball, or describe the 5 skills that you could use that would increase hip mobility, that type of thing. And then you have affective, so cooperate, work independently, value, and express. Those would all be different types of behaviors. So caring for someone, showing affection, giving a high five. Physical activity is one of the few areas that allows for the development of all 3 domains that are so important to growth and development. So psychomotor domain, you have like balance, coordination, gross motor development, kinesthetic, tactile, and spatial learning styles, cardiovascular fitness, muscular strength, endurance, and flexibility. Cognitive domain, development of learning styles, auditory, number of awareness, vocabulary, learning and following directions, auditory cues, sequencing skills, problem solving, and then social emotional domain, non-competitive, non-aggressive, non-violent, gender equal, all-inclusive, culturally adaptive, working alone, with a partner, or in a small group. So these will be all different examples. Support Real Teachers has a great site that goes even more in depth on the different domains. So it'll show you something like an example of the different levels of the cognitive domain. So level 1, receive. It's willing to listen and open to new experiences. An example in PE would be the student will be able to listen to their partner's suggestions for game strategy. So getting them to receive information. Respond. The student will be able to contribute in a group discussion following a team building activity. So they raise their hand, they talk about what they're learning, talk about they contribute somehow, so they're responding. And then 3, value. Examine why physical activity is important to them. So it goes up to all the way to psychomotor. It goes through the levels. Example 1, level 1, imitation. Student will be able to copy the teacher's demonstration of an overhand throwing technique. To naturalization, students will be able to perform an overhand throw with ease during gameplay. So the objectives kind of set you up for also creating student learning outcomes and objectives for when you lesson plan. And then when we look at something like social domain you have in here. I believe they have the affective domain as well, or they're calling it the social domain. So, rec- um, receiving a message, that type of thing. So, um, if you're looking for more information, check out supportrealteachers.org. They have a great spot on domains of learning. When it comes to outcomes for criteria, you might want to say something like you're going for 9 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 process. So you can use things like qualitative stuff like properly or correct form or successfully completing. So they can use quantitative or qualitative when it comes to outcomes. When it comes to goals, these are going to be um, the broad things that we're trying to accomplish. So specifically for people with severe disabilities, might just be improve fine motor skills. It could just be improve body awareness. It could be improve ocular motor control. It could be increase passive active movement, which such as stretching, rolling, crawling, walking, pushing, chair. Experiences various forms of tactile and vestibular stimulation, improve lifetime recreational leisure and fitness skills. So these would be some basic goals, maybe for people with severe disabilities. So maybe they're not such as might not be as high as someone without a physical disability. You might be just focusing on fine motor skills or body awareness or ocular motor control. Goals are general statements that give a direction to your program, and then student learning outcomes or objectives relate to goal and must be measurable. So they have to describe the action, like we talked about, the condition, and the environment. So, conditions, which could also include assessment circumstances. So, while playing a game, using a plastic bat, while in prone position in waist deep water. So, really describing the condition and what's going on, and then performance criterion would be what is expected level of achievement in individual that the individual should be able to perform. So do you want them to do it 4 out of 5 times? Do you want them to swim the length of the pool? How many minutes? 80% of the time, that type of thing. So an example for psychomotor, each student will be able to travel in general space using feet in at least 3 different ways without touching anyone else. So behavior is travel, the condition is general space, and the criteria is use 3 different ways of traveling without touching anyone. Okay. Um, Next, cognitive example. Each student will be able to list 3 accurate cues for a basketball jump shot when asked to at the end of class. So behavior would be list cues for a basketball jump shot. Condition would be when asked, and then criteria would be 3 accurate ones. And then affective example would be each student will be able to help others by providing feedback to a partner. Behavior would be help others, condition would be to partner, criteria would be providing feedback. So these would just be some examples of um, using the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains when you're creating student learning outcomes. So, what is next? Lecture 5. We're going to talk about individualized education planning, objective, and goal setting. So, we're going to talk about specific cases in IEPs, and we'll talk about what an IEP is, and we'll talk about what an IEP will basically give you. So, basically, you'll create goals based on present level performance, and we'll talk about how to create those objectives and learning outcomes. All right, everyone, appreciate it. See you in lecture 5 and have a good day.